You could look at it from different points of view, but the fact of the matter is that we have been in the deep renewal process in the government, in the ruling party. So I would take it that it is part of that deep renewal process. In the deep renewal process, we have been working on how to widen democratic and political space in Ethiopia. We have been also working to build national consensus. So we had a very long discussion on the top leadership of the ruling party for almost 17 days. And finally, one of the measures that the ruling party has decided to take is, as you rightly mentioned, to see the cases of some political leaders who have been convicted of crimes, whose case has been to the court, and court has given a verdict and sentences, and some of them are serving their prison terms. But at the same time, of course, the party leadership has also considered the cases of some political leaders whose cases are in due process of law. And in the best interest of course, our national consensus, in the best interest of widening democratic space in Ethiopia, and of course, as part of our deep renewal process in the country, yes, that decision has been taken, and some of political leaders have been released last week. A total case of 528 people have been released. There are another category of political leaders that will be considered or being considered in the process, because their cases, they are serving prison term. And in that case, we have what we call a pardon process in Ethiopia. So their case should be submitted to what we call a pardon board. We have board of pardon that will go through the criteria that was set to release political leaders. And on the basis of the criteria, then their case will be, once they have met the criteria, then their name will be submitted for the head of state, because in our constitution, it is only the head of state who can give pardon. So that is in the making, that is in the process. He is going to Ethiopia as part of the AU summit. As you know, starting yesterday, the summit process has started yesterday. Yesterday and today, there is a meeting of permanent representative committees, or at the level of ambassadors. And then 2 days after, we will have a Council of Ministers meeting. That is a meeting of foreign ministers of the AU. Then that will lead to the summit on 28th and 29th. So Commissioner Mimisa will be attending the AU summit, and on the margins, of course, it is highly likely that he may interact with a wider audience there. I don't have his specific problem, but for sure what I know is that he is going in the framework of the AU summit. Our assessment is, first, we strongly believe that this partnership is important. This partnership is important both for Europe and Africa. We are neighbors, we have common destiny, and we are bound to live together, to face common challenges. But we would like also to bring about a paradigm shift in our partnership with EU. The old equation of donor-recipient relationship must give way to a new, real, genuine partnership, and I think that was a reflection of one of the summit debate. And as such, we believe that there should be an equal, mutually beneficiary, and a partnership based on respect should be promoted. There is an agreement on that, and both sides have renewed their political commitment to do more in terms of challenges that are facing the two continents. The third and the most important element of the outcome for me was we have put a very clear follow-up mechanism. Every year between the two summits, there will be a ministerial meeting from both sides as a way of follow-up mechanism. So that is also a very good outcome of the summit, and Ethiopia has been insisting that there should be such a mechanism. Related to this is what we call a concrete action plan that will put the political commitment into actual work on the ground, and that action plan is now being worked out between the AU Commission and the EU Commission. So given this political commitment, realization of the importance of the partnership, having a follow-up mechanism, and then working on action plan for us is a clear outcome of, I think, the summit, and we are happy with that. But surely we need to do more because any partnership to have meaningful impact, surely we need a commitment from both sides. And in that regard, I think the political commitment that was declared by heads of state and heads of government should be translated into action. We would like the actions that are taken or that will be taken should add up to the Africa 2063 agenda, because that's an agenda that all African countries are striving to achieve, because Agenda 2063 will bring serious transformation in the continent, integration, as well as, of course, transformation in all aspects of life of Africans. So the partnership should add value to Africa's Agenda 2063. I would say, all in all, I think there was a very good turnout, there was a very good attendance, and I think there is a very good debate. We have identified priority items for our next and for implementation in the coming 3 years. And then, of course, 2020 will be a very important year in terms of our partnership. As you know, the partnership between Africa and the EU within the framework of ACP is governed by what we call Cotonou Partnership Agreement. And that agreement will expire in 2020. So we have already initiated work on how we should negotiate on successor agreement. So that successor agreement is also important, and there are different ideas that are coming in, and we are working on that. So yes, our assessment generally is positive. First of all, we don't believe in imposition because something that is imposed without your will from outside will not last long. We have seen this, I think, from our past experience. This is exactly what has happened in Africa in the past, and Ethiopia would like to see that come to an end, and for us it has come to an end. So ownership means, first and foremost, you take your destiny into your own hands. Secondly, it means that you own the policies and the strategies that you think, that you believe are good for Ethiopia, good for Africa. And on the basis of ownership of policy, that we believe that the development of Ethiopia should be owned by Ethiopians. This, however, does not mean that we should not, we are saying that we should not work with our partners. Definitely in that process, we need our partners, but the partners should work in terms of our policies, our strategies that we have defined for ourselves. And we have seen the benefit and the result of ownership of development process in Ethiopia. In the last 15 years, 20 years, I think you might have followed yourself as a journalist, maybe previously as a diplomat, the tremendous and significant change Ethiopia has brought and continues to bring about. And that is, I think, the secret of ownership of development process in Ethiopia. As I said, we need investment, we need trade, we need peace and security in the region. We need, of course, to work with global community in terms of climate change, fight terrorism, and partnership also becomes very important. But without your work, without your clarity of policy domestically, surely you will not achieve much in terms of even partnership. So that's why, and that's the rationale, and that is why we believe in ownership of development process. And it's working for us, and we are happy with it. It's a big news because it's part of what we call Ethiopian Renaissance and then our transformation agenda. Because in 2000, today we are in 2010 according to Ethiopian calendar, but 10 years ago we declared what we call Ethiopian Renaissance. Secondly, to realize the Renaissance agenda of Ethiopia, then we came up with what we call transformation plan. So that transformation plan essentially aims at bringing structural change in the economy. It aims to bring structural change in the societal structure. It also aims in industrializing Ethiopia and ushering in Ethiopia into a middle income country in another maybe 1 decade. So it is part of the whole bigger and broad picture of Ethiopian Renaissance. But in order for us to achieve a middle-income country in another 10 years, in order to join the developed world maybe in another 30, 40 years, we have no other choice than making big plans, big transformation, big growth. And that's why you see in the news that Ethiopia's economic growth has been one of the fastest over the last several years. It is a double digit. It is an equitable growth because many statistical measures indicate that the distribution of the outcome of Ethiopian economic growth is fairly fair. And yes, we are doing also reforestation, a massive reforestation program in Ethiopia because we have been one of the victims of climate change. So transformation in education, transformation in rural and agricultural development, transformation now, we are entering into industrialization, transformation in infrastructure, and that's why you see that Ethiopia is building huge infrastructure program in the country. And then, of course, we always believe that that huge transformation we make should also be linked to the region, and that's why we are trying to champion huge infrastructure, actually, not only within Ethiopia, but with networking our neighbors. So it is, as I said, a bigger vision we have for our country. And the very idea of owning the whole process, I think, also matches with allies with our Renaissance and transformation plan. Our policy towards receiving refugee actually is very clear because the government has declared what it calls open door policy for refugees coming from our neighboring countries. One is our international obligation. we are dictated by international obligations. Second, I think we have never really responsibility. And the third, when we were in difficulty in Ethiopia, before this government came in, we had a lot of Ethiopian refugees in neighboring countries, including Sudan, Kenya, and so on and so forth. So I think it is time for Ethiopia also to pay back. So we have currently, according to UNHCR, about 850,000 refugees from different neighboring countries. We have refugees coming from South Sudan in about 300,000 maybe, Eritrea in 200,000, Somalia, the same number. So all in all, we are currently hosting about 850,000 refugees. Now, how are we coping? In fact, we have come up with a new policy, what we call a comprehensive management of refugees. The last 10, 15 years, our experience with the refugee was to keep many of the refugees in the camps. But we have found out that it is counterproductive because refugees are mainly young people, energetic people, people with talents. So keeping them in the camp, I think, is a very counterproductive thing to do. And we have, with the support of course, our partners, including European Union, we are trying to encourage, first, create jobs for refugees from our industrial parks, send some of refugees to education, primary, secondary, as well as university and technical and vocational training. We also encourage refugees to create, small startups here and there. We also encourage refugees to go to farming in certain areas. We have prepared land for refugees so that they can engage in agriculture. And we also encourage refugees actually to integrate wherever they have a means to integrate, friends, relatives to integrate, then we also allow integration. And so it's not only that they are in camps, but we have many refugees actually in cities. So it's a comprehensive policy approach that we are also now introducing to the issue of refugees. But the whole question I think you have raised is a very important one because we have challenges, of course. We know challenges that accompany refugee. Security issue is there, environment issue is there, and of course resources also there. Managing them is not an easy issue, but well, if Ethiopia really would champion regional integration, if Ethiopia would champion people-to-people relationship, I think that's the best way to do it. Now, we have differences with some, for instance, with the government of Eritrea on bilateral relationship, but we have said to ourselves that we should not do anything that will affect people-to-people relationship between the peoples of Ethiopia and Eritrea. So it has to do with the policy, but of course we do partner with several countries from Europe, European Union institutions, United Nations systems, and also, of course, when training young refugees, surely we do it in our own universities with our own resources. So it's a challenge, but a challenge worth taking, and that's how the government is managing the refugee issues. Yes, there are parties and there are attitudes in Europe against migration, but I think the mainstream political parties as well as the mainstream European institutions do believe in managing the refugee issue together. And I think that is the right thing to do and that is the right approach to address this issue.